Do you need to be able to play a musical instrument in order to produce? This question gets asked so much, and I do think there is an answer to this. I think either side can, in fact, be argued for. However, I do actually have an opinion on this, which I will share with you at the end. So here's the most common arguments I hear for not needing to play an instrument. Everyone has to start somewhere, so even if you can't play an instrument straight away, you can learn as you go. And some people are really amazing at choosing samples and they have naturally a very good ear. I have a few friends that can DJ quite well but couldn't produce a note of music, but they often have great taste. So if I ask them something, they can say, oh, I would do that, but I wouldn't do this. Or maybe you could try something that goes a bit like this there. There are a lot more resources available today that you didn't used to have. In the past, you had to be part of a band, you had to be a singer, you had to be a session player. There was no other alternative. But now the DAWs are so good and the loops that come with them are so good, and there's also third-party loops that you can just, as long as you have a decent ear, you can throw together a load of loops without ever even playing a note of your own music. There's many artists out there that might not necessarily be great instrumentalists, but they can put an amazing tune together. One that I often talk about is Burial, and he just put a load of different samples together using Audacity, which is a very basic audio editor, and just piece together little snippets and show such good things without ever playing a note on that album. So no, in all honesty, you don't have to be able to play a musical instrument in order to produce music. And this is why I think maybe it is a good idea to play a musical instrument if you want to produce. If you can, it definitely helps. For instance, I just started off as a drummer. I can play drums reasonably well, and that has helped massively, especially if you're writing electronic music when it comes to beats and groove. Like, I think a lot of producers that don't play the drums do struggle with this a little bit. Sure, they can use a beat, they can use a loop, but get them to program their own drums and they're completely at a loss. And one thing you might find is that your music doesn't quite sound authentic or real enough, and that's often the case when you put loads of samples together. It might not be a problem in EDM stuff, but if you want to give a bit more life to your music, at some point humans connect with humans, so hearing a real vocalist makes a big difference. And once again, yes, you can get samples of vocals or loops of vocals, and you can use them to bring that authenticity, that organic feel. My approach was always, I want to learn as much about musical instruments as possible in order to make me the better producer. So I was already a drummer, but then I wanted to learn guitar and piano and even a little bit of vocals, just so I could communicate with other artists better about this. And when it comes to music theory, do you need to know about music theory? There's sort of an interesting paradox that happens with music production. At first, you don't really know anything, you don't know what you're doing, and you almost seem the most creative because you don't know any rules. But once you know things like music theory, it almost acts as like a cage. You're trying to conform to these rules or these perceived rules. And for a while in the kind of middle, the gray zone, the middle areas, like 2 to 5 years into producing, you kind of get stuck by these rules that you think that you have to abide by. For instance, oh, you've got a major scale and a minor scale. Well, what if something falls outside of that? Does that mean you can't use it? Or you're meant to follow particular chord progressions that fit with that key, but that might be before you know about sort of chord substitution and that it is actually okay to swap out a minor chord for a major chord. Then when you learn that, that opens doors. So music theory can actually act as a wall, as a block for people at times. The more advanced you get, you realize that that theory there is just kind of a guidance, like this is how it works, but you can completely throw those rules out if you want to. So obviously knowing how to write music and play different instruments is going to help you. There's no doubt about it. Doesn't mean that you still can't produce music even if you can't play an instrument. You can. And you can very quickly learn some basic music theory just to get you going. Just learning basic major scale, minor scale, and then on a MIDI keyboard, you can get going very easily. So which instrument should you learn if you want to learn an instrument to help with your music? I always suggest piano is the best one, or keyboard, because you've got a MIDI keyboard anyway and it connects. It's a lot easier to understand music theory and how it all goes together when you can see it very clearly on a keyboard. Like linearly, every note is like a half step up. On a guitar, it's a bit more complex to see that because it's kind of tuned in fourths and thirds. Yeah, even to this day, like, I have to think a bit more when I'm playing guitar about where my scales are compared to on a piano, which just makes a lot more sense linearly, in my opinion. So I would always recommend piano over guitar. If, however, you're doing rock and roll music and that kind of stuff, more indie, then yeah, maybe guitar would be the better choice. A lot of this advice is dependent on what genre you do. If you're going to be doing electronic music, then even learning some basic drums will be really helpful, because then you start to understand different grooves and timing and ghost notes and accents. Yeah, the drums become very helpful for any sort of electronic music, EDM, drum and bass, etc. So, do you need a musical instrument in order to produce music? I don't think you do. However, I think that it helps if you do know one. And as you go on your musical production journey, you'll hit ceilings at different points. And I think at some points you will be limited by the fact that you can't play an instrument. For instance, your melodies might be a little bit weak or your harmony not too interesting. If you want to get to the pinnacle of your craft, then I think it really does help. And how about you? What do you guys think? Should you know a musical instrument in order to produce music? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be interested to hear your takes. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, then check out this one up here because YouTube is very smart and this is the one it thinks you should watch. Take care, hope you have a great day. See you later.